They are two outsiders who married princes, became favourites of Queen Elizabeth, and are key to the future of the British royal family.
Every few months, a new headline claims to reveal the real story behind Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's break with the royal family. A secret confession, a bombshell interview, a smoking gun detail nobody saw coming. Almost none of it holds up. But strip away the invented quotes and the anonymous insiders, and what's left is stranger and more human than most of the fabricated versions. A genuine family rift, playing out in public, built from real decisions, real statements, and real consequences that are still unfolding in the summer of 2026. This is that story, as it actually happened. In July 2016, a mutual friend set up a blind date between Prince Harry, then fifth in line to the throne, and Meghan Markle, an American actress known for playing paralegal Rachel Zane on the legal drama Suits. They kept the relationship private for months, but by November 2016, Kensington Palace had confirmed it publicly and issued an unusual statement condemning the racist and sexist abuse Meghan was already receiving in parts of the British press and on social media. That statement told you almost everything about what was coming. Meghan wasn't just marrying into a family. She was marrying into a media apparatus that had a long, documented history of treating outsider women, especially women of color, with a hostility that had nothing to do with their behavior and everything to do with who they were. They announced their engagement in November 2017 and married on May 19, 2018, at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, in a ceremony watched by an estimated 2 billion people worldwide. Meghan became the Duchess of Sussex. Their son, Archie, was born in May 2019, their daughter, Lilibet, in June 2021, by which point the family no longer lived in the UK at all. That's the part worth sitting with before getting into the conflict. This wasn't a slow-burning disagreement over decades. Harry and Meghan went from wedding to walking away from royal duties in under 2 years. Something moved fast, and it moved fast in both directions, in the press coverage, inside the palace, and inside the marriage itself. In January 2020, Harry and Meghan announced, without fully coordinating with the rest of the family beforehand, that they intended to step back as senior working royals and become financially independent. The announcement blindsided Buckingham Palace and reportedly upset Queen Elizabeth II, who was said to want more time to work through the details privately rather than through a public statement. Within days, the tabloids had a name for it, Megxit. The terms that followed were stark. Harry and Meghan gave up their Royal Highness titles, stepped down from royal duties, and lost their UK taxpayer-funded security detail. They relocated first to Canada, then to Los Angeles, and eventually settled in Montecito, California, where they still live today. From the royal family side, the framing was that Harry and Meghan had chosen to leave the institution and in leaving it, gave up the protections and support that came with staying. From Harry and Meghan's side, a case they would make at length over the next several years, the environment inside the institution and the press coverage that came with it had become untenable, particularly around Meghan's treatment and their concerns about racism. Both of those things can be assessed on their own terms, and the public record on each is more complicated than either side's shorthand suggests. What isn't in dispute is that by early 2020, a working relationship inside the firm had broken down badly enough that both sides preferred separation to continuing as before. In March 2021, Harry and Meghan sat down with Oprah Winfrey for a 2-hour primetime interview that remains the single most consequential event in this entire story. In it, Meghan described feeling suicidal during her time as a working royal and said she had asked for help and did not receive it. She and Harry also said that an unnamed member of the family had raised concerns about how dark their son Archie's skin might be before he was born, a claim that, whatever its full context, was explosive precisely because it touched directly on race inside the institution. Buckingham Palace's response, issued in Queen Elizabeth's name days later, was notably brief and carefully worded. The family was saddened to learn the extent of how challenging the last few years had been. The issues raised, particularly race, were concerning, and some recollections may vary, but Harry, Meghan, and Archie would always be loved family members. It was a statement built to close the subject publicly while not conceding much at all. The Oprah interview didn't create the rift. but it hardened it. It moved the dispute from a couple who left to a couple who had, in the family's private view, broken an unwritten rule about never airing internal grievances for a global television audience. Whatever chance existed for a quieter reconciliation narrowed considerably that night. If Oprah was the crack, Prince Harry's 2023 memoir Spare was, for many royal watchers, the point where things stopped being reparable in the short term. The book became the fastest-selling non-fiction title in UK history, moving over 1.4 million copies across its first day of sales in multiple countries. It also contained details that no previous royal memoir had ever included. Harry wrote about physical altercations with William, about his own drug use as a young man, about the raw grief of losing his mother, Princess Diana, and about a family that he portrayed as more concerned with managing its image than caring for him. Royal commentators and, reportedly, members of the family itself viewed the book as a betrayal on a different scale than anything before it. According to reporting from multiple outlets, senior royals had asked Harry, around the time of Queen Elizabeth's death in September 2022, to stop airing grievances publicly if he ever wanted to repair the relationship with his father and brother. 4 months later, Spare was released. Harry has since acknowledged, in his own words, that some members of his family may never forgive him for writing it. Underneath all the personal drama sits a genuinely unresolved legal and constitutional question. Who pays to protect Harry, Meghan, and their children when they're in the UK, and on what basis? When Harry stepped back from royal duties in 2020, his taxpayer-funded police protection was downgraded. He sued to have it reinstated, arguing that the risk assessment process used to make that decision was flawed and that his family's safety was being treated inconsistently with other former working royals. He lost. In May 2025, the UK Court of Appeal upheld the original ruling against him. Hours after that defeat, Harry gave an emotional interview to the BBC in which he said his father won't speak to him because of the security dispute, that he would love reconciliation with his family, and that there was no point continuing to fight anymore. He also said pointedly that he didn't know how much longer his father had left to live, a reference to King Charles's cancer diagnosis, first announced in February 2024. Harry added that he couldn't see a version of events where he would bring his wife and children back to the UK permanently under the current security arrangements. That interview, rather than opening a door, seemed to many royal commentators to close one further. Sources close to the family suggested Harry's decision to discuss the rift publicly again, even while expressing a wish for peace, undercut the very reconciliation he said he wanted, since the family reportedly views any public commentary from Harry as a continuation of the same pattern that led to Oprah and Spare in the first place. The picture isn't static, and it isn't uniformly cold. In July 2026, Harry made a rare visit to the UK, attending events for charities he's long supported, visiting his grandmother's grave, and, significantly, meeting privately with King Charles for the first time in months. That reunion was widely reported as a genuine, if cautious, step toward repairing at least the father-son relationship, which had been strained further by the distance imposed by Charles's illness and Harry's reduced visits. Prince William's side of the relationship has moved far less. Multiple reports from royal sources describe William as simply declining to engage with the subject of Harry at all, not hosting a public feud, but not extending an opening either. One source described the mood around William's office as a quiet mutual avoidance. Nobody brings up Harry's interviews or statements, and William doesn't ask. Royal commentators have suggested that when William eventually becomes king, the distance between the brothers may be difficult to close, given how publicly and repeatedly the disputes between them have played out. The same July 2026 UK visit also produced a smaller, Messier dispute that says a lot about how fragile the relationship remains, a disagreement over accommodation. Harry's team said the palace withdrew an offer of royal housing for the visit at the last minute after it had been accepted. Buckingham Palace's account was that Harry initially declined the offer, then changed his mind too late for it to be arranged. Both versions can't be fully true at once, and that a housing logistics dispute became a public back and forth through the press tells you how little trust remains between the two camps, even when the underlying issue is genuinely minor. While Harry's public statements have focused on reconciliation and security, Meghan's public life over the past 2 years has moved almost entirely away from royal-adjacent framing altogether. In March 2024, she launched a lifestyle brand initially called American Riviera Orchard, rebranded in 2025 as Ever, selling jam, wine, and home goods. She released a Netflix lifestyle series, With Love, Meghan, and launched a podcast called Confessions of a Female Founder. In 2026, Harry and Meghan's media company extended its multi-year content deal with Netflix. Reporting this year suggests Meghan has grown less interested in the reconciliation project than Harry has, sources describing her as wanting to leave the royal drama in the past entirely and focus on the brand and family life the couple has built in California, rather than continuing a public back and forth that, in her view, only reopens old wounds without changing anything. Whether that's her actual private view or a media narrative built around a handful of sources is impossible to verify from outside, a caveat that applies to a great deal of the insider reporting on this family, on every side of it. No account of this period is complete without Catherine, Princess of Wales, whose own 2024 cancer diagnosis and treatment reshaped the family's public year in ways that had nothing to do with Meghan at all. William himself has publicly described 2024 as the hardest year of his life, between his father's diagnosis and his wife's. Catherine's approach, largely private during treatment, then a gradual, carefully managed return to public duties, has been widely covered, and comparisons between her popularity and Meghan's have become a recurring tabloid staple, particularly around royal engagements and public appearances that draw very different levels of enthusiasm from UK crowds. Polling on royal favorability has consistently shown Catherine and William well ahead of Meghan among UK respondents, a genuine and measurable gap, even if the tabloid framing of it as some kind of ongoing rivalry between the women themselves is mostly manufactured for clicks. As of July 2026, here's what's real. Harry has had a cautious but genuine reunion with his father. His relationship with William remains distant by all available reporting, with neither side actively working to repair it. The security dispute that's driven much of the recent conflict remains legally unresolved in Harry's favor, and it continues to shape whether and how often he brings his family to the UK. Meghan's public life has moved almost entirely into business and media territory separate from the royal family, and reporting suggests she's less invested in reconciliation than her husband currently is. King Charles's health remains a serious, ongoing concern that both sides reference when discussing the urgency of resolving things. And the interviews, memoirs, and lawsuits that got this family here were built one real, documented decision at a time, not a single dramatic confession from a single royal, but 8 years of accumulated choices on every side that have proven very hard to walk back. That's a messier, less satisfying story than the kind you'll find in a headline promising a shocking confession that ends everything overnight. But it's the one that's actually true, and it's still being written.